You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Rocky Mountain Rooftop Network, part of the Fans First Sports Network. I am your host, Skyler Timmons, once again this week, and returning from Shadow Moses Island, it's Solid Snake Evan Lang.
Hi, D. What's a Russian gunship doing in a place like this? Yeah, my sultry, smoky voice is here. I unfortunately was rather sick over the last week or two. Huge thanks to Dustin Timmons for filling in for me. As you can tell, I really didn't have a voice when it was time to record last weekend. Have enough of a voice to be recording this week. I just sound a little bit like David Hayter, which is that so much a bad thing?
No. I would prefer you sound more like Kiefer Sutherland, though.
No, it's David Hayter.
It's true.
The boss.
Most random thing that he was the one who wrote the original X-Men movie in 2000. He was one of the writers for it, and he's done a lot of movie stuff.
I have to destroy the Shagahod. By the way, Metal Gear Solid 3 is the best Metal Gear Solid game. I will not take any alternatives.
I've been playing Metal Gear Solid 2, and that one's not bad.
They're all good. I mean, I don't love MGS5, mainly because it feels unfinished, which it is. But I think overall the best game of the series is Snake Eater. It's my personal favorite.
With the longest ladder climb in video game history.
But also it's got the song to go with it.
Snake Eater.
I'm still in a dream. Snake Eater.
And one day that movie will come out.
No, it won't.
Probably never going to come out. It's been too long.
I'm looking forward to the remaster of MGS3, though. That's going to be cool.
Mm-hmm.
Though it's got a stupid name.
Delta. They're keeping Kojima's spirit alive.
Anyway, the order from best to worst of mainline games is 3, 1, 2, 4, 5.
But what about Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake?
Both good, harder to get your hands on. Also, both very difficult games in comparison to the other ones.
Mm-hmm. I got them all in the Master Collection, and they are rough.
What about Snake's Revenge?
Huh? No, that'll come later.
Big boss.
Anyways, we're not here to talk about Solid Snake and Metal Gear Solid and all of its weird anime goofiness and political thrillers. But it was on theme, Evan, because it was 4th of July recently, and usually around this time of year, there's a lot of talk of stars, Star-Spangled Banners, Stars and Stripes, All Stars by Smash Mouth.
Stars.
Resident Evil 3 reference.
President Weevil.
But All-Star Game. It's coming up soon. We are near the home stretch before the All-Star break. Got about, another week of games to go? Week and a half?
Pretty much. So the All-Star break is going to start at the end of this week. I think the break itself starts, the 12th?
Whatever starts on Sunday.
Yeah, the festivities start over the weekend. Home Run Derby is on Saturday the 13th, I believe.
When's the All-Star game?
Yeah,
Would the Home Run Derby be on the 15th?
Oh, no, you know what I'm thinking of? Saturday the 13th is the Futures game and the Futures game skill competition.
There you go.
And then I believe Monday the 15th is the Home Run Derby, and then Tuesday the 16th is the actual All-Star game. Taking place at a stadium that I think gets a pretty bad rap in terms of its appearance. A lot of people make fun of Globe Life because of the roof, which I admit, the roof itself doesn't look great, but the stadium itself is very, very nice. Having been there about 4 total times now. It's a very nice ballpark.
Yeah, and somewhere the draft's in there too. So that'll be fun. We'll do our fun talking about pre-draft and all that good stuff next week's episode. But the All-Star Game announcer, and they've announced starters with a ridiculous fan vote. We'll get into that. We've got a beef to pick with a lot of this stuff, as we always do. But first and foremost, hey, the Rockies All-Star for this season initially, maybe there could be additions, but it's none other than Rockies third baseman Ryan McMahon earns the All-Star nod for the Rockies to be their lone rep at this moment. Time of recording, as it reserves and everything were announced here on Sunday, July 7th. But give it up for Ryan McMahon. Pretty well deserving. Has really been one of the Rockies' best players this whole season.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of known for the last month or so that it was going to be McMahon. On episodes of this show and on Purple Row, we floated Tovar, Doyle, Cal Quantrill, all guys that would definitely be deserving of a spot. But it's been pretty clear from the get-go that it was probably going to be Ryan McMahon, definitely the most deserving. Having what is shaping up to be a career year so far this season, where as of time of recording, he's hitting 272, 347, 454 with 14 home runs, 19 doubles, and 45 RBI, while also still being one of the best defensive third basemen in the league again. Currently tied for the league lead when it comes to defensive runs saved, has the best UZR, has the second best outs above average, and has the third best total defensive wins above replacement. So, Ryan McMahon is out there doing his thing, and he's definitely, the Rocky to be going to the All-Star game this year. There's still a chance that some of these other guys make it in after all said and done with replacements and injury substitutions. But right now, the honor goes to McMahon.
Yeah, and it's tough because the Rockies are a bad team, a very bad team this year. And, McMahon hasn't been immune to falling off a little bit. He's had a wonderful first month of the season, and with like a lot of things that happen in baseball where a lot of awards and things are decided in April, where they just make up their mind, like, this guy's going to win Rookie of the Year. And then that guy does, even though he had some bad stretches in there. But yeah, McMahon struggled a little bit, fell off average-wise at least in May and June. But still, overall in the year, a pretty solid year where he's put up 14 home runs. He's been the best offensive player for the Rockies, or at least the most consistent, even if he has had some slumps in there. But overall, he just seemed like, this is the guy where, like he said, one of the best defensive third basemen in the league. A lot of his offensive stats are fitting to like second in the league. Second, or he's in the top 5 in National League third baseman. There was a case where he should have been more of a consideration for a finalist to start at third base. But when you play for the Rockies and they're terrible, you don't get as much national recognition, and you don't have a rabid Phillies fan base voting for everybody under the sun that wears a P on their hat. But overall, a pretty deserving thing. And I think it was nice. The guy who's been overlooked for Gold Gloves, where he's really shined at third base since taking over there full time in place of Nolan Arenado, made a name for himself defensively, improved that. And then this year's kind of been that coming out party of just really establishing himself as what the Rockies have hoped he would be. And, he's grown into teams around the league. Where's Ryan McMahon going to play? Are they going to trade him? They should trade him. As you and I know, Evan, they're not going to trade him.
Yeah.
But
I could have done without the All-Star selection show was on ESPN this year, and I could have done without the somewhat snide comment from the ESPN crew when they were announcing them. Basically, all they said about Ryan McMahon was Ryan McMahon is a Rocky for now and is also an all-star. And that's all he got. And I found that really frustrating because pretty much anyone who follows the team knows, one, the Rockies aren't going to trade Ryan McMahon, but two, he's just such a better player than that to deserve that being all that is said about him. When you look at National League third baseman, he's got the second best batting average, the best on base percentage, the third best slugging percentage, the second best OPS. He's got he's tied for the second most home runs with Jeimer Candelario. He's got 19 doubles. He's got the second most, tied for the second most walks of all National League third basemen. And that's just the National Leagues. He ranks pretty highly in terms of offensive statistics among all Major League third basemen. And yet, it's because it's the Rockies, because they're a bad team. That's pretty much all he got in terms of fanfare. So it was nice to see, Bud Black and his teammates talk him up after the announcement was made. Kyle Freeland had a lot of nice things to say about his friend and teammate as well. They announced it in front of the whole team that he was the all-star representative for the team.
Mm-hmm. And I can guarantee you those ESPN announcers hadn't heard of Ryan McMahon until they were reading it on the teleprompter. Oh, Ryan McMahon, Colorado still has a team? But
I thought they were relegated.
Yeah, I thought that was a AAA team. And, the way they've played, we could forgive them for that. But, yeah, it's just nice, good for Mac, and more than deserving. I'd say throw him in the home run derby, but that's not going to happen. But just good, solid, and hey, maybe we can go back to back with All-Star Game MVPs. How about that? Wouldn't that be something?
That would be really great to see. I don't know if it's going to happen.
It's not going to happen,
but it would be very funny. We're back to back. It was a player who was a reserve who comes in obviously later in the game because they're not a starter, and then they hit an all-important home run to be the MVP.
Mm-hmm. It would be pretty sweet.
Of course, talking about Elias Diaz, my question, and I wrote this in the article about Ryan McMahon being an all-star over on purplerow.com, because our own Renee Deckert was there asking McMahon some questions in the media scrum about if he's going to borrow any of Charlie Blackmon's Star Spangled wardrobe that he's worn for his various all-star selections.
There you go. Wear those blue denim jeans and his really American flag t-shirt. He doesn't have the mullet. He doesn't have the facial hair. It doesn't have the hair features to pull that off.
Is it Ryan's got his hair's growing out nicely, and he's got at least somewhat of a beard now. I remember when he, didn't really have either, when he came into the league and couldn't really grow a beard at all.
Yeah, but you can look at Ryan McMahon like, yeah, that kid's probably from California. You look at Chuck and like, where backwater country did you pull this Sasquatch from?
They pulled him from the river.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so big congratulations to Mac. We look forward to seeing him just repping the Rockies there at the All-Star game. And I think that's the thing we can transition to here real quick before we take a break. The rest of the All-Star team, there's always reactions that people are going to have, disagreements with a lot of All-Star snubs. And we'll talk about a couple of guys in the second segment. But I think for me, it's really good that every team gets a rep. There's a lot of good players on every team, and they deserve to be recognized. It's nice to celebrate everybody in the whole league, because otherwise I don't want to just watch a game that's full of Phillies and Dodgers and Yankees because of the fan voting and everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like that everybody gets a rep, but still that selection process, it's a very flawed system still. And I think really going back to the process of selecting the starters for the All-Star game, because Evan, fans aren't very partial to selecting the best players.
Yeah, for sure. And it's always frustrating because you have these guys who, at the time of when the voting is complete, that have really barely played. So Trey Turner is an excellent shortstop and an excellent player. He's not really played that much this season due to injuries. Mm-hmm. And yet he's the starting third baseman. So I'm pulling him up right now to see starting shortstop. He only has 212 at bats this season. He's played in 50 total games, and we hit 88, 89 this week.
Mm-hmm.
And
all of May and half of June.
And there are some guys who are definitely deserving. who got in from the fan vote. Stephen Kwan from the Cleveland Guardians has been excellent. And I really like,
but even he just barely became a qualified hitter because he missed a good chunk of time with injury.
But then, of course, it's always going to be the biggest names get in. So, like Vlad Guerrero Jr. is at first base for the National League. Bryce Harper is at Vlad Guerrero Jr. is at first base for the American League, with Bryce Harper at first for the National League. And there are definitely some, I don't hate overall the rosters, but it's always really frustrating to see how dominated they tend to be by one or two teams. So, like, the Dodgers have 6 All-Stars. The Phillies have 7. The Yankees have a bunch. That's why I think it's so important that they changed it so that every team has at least one representative, because then you have, the Rockies with their one representative. The A's only have one representative in reliever Mason Miller, who, of course, is very, very deserving. But, the Orioles have a bunch. It's the Guardians have a surprising amount. They have, I think, 6 total All-Stars this year as well. Frankly, it's something that's always going to be imperfect when the starters are left up to a fan vote. I'm reminded of, what was it, the 2016 All-Star game, oops, all Royals.
Yeah, there's got to be some sort of process, whether it's qualifiers, like, okay, these guys aren't eligible for the All-Star game now because they don't have the required, they're not qualified hitters right now, they're not qualified players. The fan voting is just kind of messed up. Why is Chris Bryant on the ballot in the outfield? Nobody's going to vote for him. Why is Martin? You could rig the system where Martin Maldonado, like the White Sox fans are trying to do, get people to vote for him to start the All-Star game. Like, there's a lot of Bodie McBoatface type voting competition, voting pushes you can do. So I don't know.
You can't trust the internet for anything.
Yeah. So it's, I don't know what you can do, really. That, or be nice too if you have, like, there's first team All-Stars, second team All-Stars, so you can just include more guys that might get snubbed. So, like, okay, this first team guys, these guys get the priority. They're going to be the ones that play in the All-Star game, maybe, and the other guys will be there, and they're there just in case. Or do a 2-game series, and first teams play one day, second teams play another day. I don't know. Just something to make sure we're not screwing it up. Because there's guys that way more deserving than some that got selected.
Yeah, and there are some, like, and that's also kind of the problem with having there have to be one player per team, is then you've got to try and pick the best guys. Like, Tyler Anderson is the representative for the Angels, and I love Tyler Anderson, and he's having a pretty good year. But if it weren't for the Angels having to have a representative, he probably would not have been selected.
Yeah, or like Luis Rengifo, who's had a pretty good year, he's not there at all. So it's definitely an imperfect system. They really need to they figure something out, because it'd just be nice to make sure people are getting recognized that need to get recognized, while also making sure everybody's, like, notable.
Yeah.
Getting recognized that should.
And of course, there's still time for other selections. In the next week or so, there's going to be substitutions. Guys who are going to get on a plane and head off to Texas to be part of the All-Star game or part of the festivities. So, I don't think people should be doing be too bummed about it yet, and just wait and see how things turn up. Rockies manager Bud Black thinks there's a pretty solid chance that maybe one of Cal Quantrill, Brenton Doyle, or Ezequiel Tovar could end up at the game as a injury substitution or reserve, and it's definitely not impossible. Is it probable? Yeah, probably not. But we can at least hold out a little bit of hope until all of those rosters are completely official.
Yeah, that All-Star game, it's imperfect, but hey, it's at least more watchable than the rest of them.
I think they need to do more fun, goofy stuff like they do in Japan and Korea. watching some of the video that's come out from the KBO All-Star game where they're like running with parachutes on and doing other stuff like that. KBO and both KBO and MPB have a bunt competition, which I really want. I love that.
Yeah, more of a skills competition like they're doing in the Futures game.
Yes, I'm so excited for that.
That hitting, the hitting competitions and stuff would be a cool little skills competition. They should do more of that stuff to highlight guys in the big leagues. Do a running competition, sprint speed. How fast can a guy run around the bases? More stuff like
it would give you more of an opportunity to send some of your guys who weren't necessarily named to the All-Star roster to go participate in fun challenges. Like get Brenton Doyle out there to participate in a speed competition. That would be fun.
Yeah, like a outfield competition, get some Olympic judges and catching competition. And of course, a lot of that's asking for injury risk, but hey, what can you do?
Yeah.
Go big or go home.
Yeah, Ryan McMahon, the lone Rockies All-Star, and then Chase Dollander is going to be in the Futures game. So there will at the very least be 2 Rockies to watch on All-Star weekend.
Dollander, I want him in big league garb soon, Evan. Next year, give him the Paul Skeens treatment. Anyways, that's a discussion for another time. But we'll take a quick break here, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about Mr. Doyle's big week. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on Affected by Altitude. Hello and welcome back here to Affected by Altitude. Talk about the All-Star game. Talk about guys that were snubbed. And there was one guy making a very late game push and may still end up in that mix. Because the National League outfield is, for lack of a better term, pretty weak representative-wise nowadays. Because Bryce Harper's at first infielder now. Mookie Betts was injured. He's an infielder now. Jerks and Profar is your starting left fielder. Deservedly so. Very good year. But Brenton Doyle has had a phenomenal week, Evan, during this past week of games against the Brewers and the Kansas City Royals. Had a very good homestand.
Yeah, Doyle was, and unfortunately it kind of ended on a little bit of a bad note. The blowout loss this afternoon to the Kansas City Royals to finish up that series was the first time all week, basically, that Doyle hadn't been on base at all. Over the last 5 games, not counting that finale, Doyle hit 647, 714, and a slugging percentage of 1.588 for an OPS over those 5 days of 2.303. 4 doubles, 4 home runs, 9 runs batted in, drew 4 walks, had just 2 strikeouts, and even stole a base. He was absolutely on fire. He was so much fun to watch. In addition to making all these spectacular plays out in the Rockies cavernous center field over at Coors, Brenton Doyle is having such a phenomenal season, and it was really nice to see him just put his best foot forward here as we're getting ready to end out the half at home. These are the last couple home games of the first half of the season before the All-Star break, and it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really dates back to that one of those final games in Chicago. No, during the Chicago series. So you can really go back to the Chicago series where he started to show some inklings, and then things really kicked off once he got home, where he's starting to show off a little bit more of that power. He's hitting the ball in the air. He's hitting for extra bases. He's got power. He's drawing some walks. Just 2 strikeouts during this homestand. Not just 2 strikeouts. Baseball Reference is not updated to include the series finale, but not a lot of strikeouts.
But that's only 3 strikeouts across 6 games. That's really solid.
Yeah. Drawing a couple of walks, hitting home runs, doing all that good stuff. And then add that to incredible Gold Glove level defense. I think this season, when we do our end of the year awards of like most improved player, I think Brenton Doyle is going to be the one that would take the cake. And it's because of weeks like he had now where we're starting to see even more growth offensively from this player who's really turned himself into a core piece of the Rockies in this little bit of figuring out, rebuilding, and figuring out what they're going to be these next couple years.
Yeah, and you look at Brenton Doyle, and we talked about him being worthy of an all-star nod because his numbers are not that far off from Ryan McMahon's. Both players have a 272 batting average after today. McMahon's on-base percentage is 347, Doyle's is 336. McMahon's OPS is 801, Doyle's is 776. Doyle has 15 doubles to McMahon's 19. Doyle also has 2 triples and 11 home runs to McMahon's 14. And, he's drawn a decent number of walks. He's drawn 29 compared to 87 strikeouts, which, he's still striking out a lot, but it's still a big improvement compared to last season. And then on the base paths, he's stolen 20 bases. And he's only been caught 3 times. So he's 20 for 23. That's really solid. And then you combine that with his just really, really strong center field defense.
And he played in 126 games last year. He had 22 stolen bases last year. And so he's 2 off from there, and we're at the roughly half point of the season. He can easily double that and get to 40 bags. And a big part of that is because of his improved offensive abilities where he's getting on base. That was the big thing. We talked about it all last year. He can get on base. He just has to get on base more. He doesn't have to do anything world-shattering with his bat. We don't care. He just needs to be league average with his bat at best, and he'll pay off. He'll be a good, solid player to have. But he's gone above and beyond that, where he's getting on base more. He's hitting for power. He can add in that extra base, and then his speed is helping generate opportunities and different options on the base paths that you didn't have last year. And he scored, this is the crazy one, Evan, 48 runs scored last year. He's at 50 this year.
Yeah, pretty much.
On base and he's scoring runs.
He's doubled or met, not doubled, I apologize. He's met basically or surpassed all of his numbers from last year.
Yeah.
At the halfway point. He's got last year he had 81 total hits. This year he's already at 84. Last year he had 137 total bases. This year he's at 136. 16 doubles last year, 15 this year, 5 triples, 2 this year, 10 to 11 home runs, 48 to 36 RBI. He's already got more walks than he had in the entire season last season. And he's just been so good. And then you combine that with his defense where, it's kind of misleading because he actually has a negative defensive run saved this year, but he's a league leader in basically every other defensive stat, including defensive WAR, ultimate zone rating, outs above average. So, he's been so good. And this is a guy where last year we were saying, oh man, if this kid could just learn how to hit almost at league average, then we're sitting pretty at center field. And what has he done this year? Well, he's hitting at the very least league average. His weighted runs created plus is 106 compared to his 43 last season. It's one of the biggest increases in all of baseball for weighted runs created plus.
Yeah, it's awesome to see that growth. And he made those mechanical changes back in that later last couple of months of the season. Really started to put things together in September, and then it's carried on as he continued to work in the off season, and it's been paying off this season. We'll touch on this real quick though. Home road splits. He's got to figure out how to do it on the road. What Rocky doesn't, but he's taking advantage of playing at Coors Field, where his speed has an advantage. Gets a ball in a gap, he can stretch a single into a double. He can stretch a double into a triple because of his speed. So I'm not going to fault him for taking advantage of Coors Field, but he's got to figure out how can I translate this onto the road where he hasn't had as much success.
Yeah, and for Doyle, honestly, I think his speed is elite enough that if he got even more aggressive, it could be really interesting to see. Because you think about Ellie De La Cruz for the Reds, who, if he's on base, he's attempting a steal.
Yeah.
And honestly, I kind of want to see if they could do that with Doyle, where if he's on base, get him to try and steal, get him to run, get him these things. Just like, I don't really care about the caught stealing numbers. It's the actual stolen bases. And if, he continues to hit and steal the way he's done, like a 20 home run, 50 stolen base season is not out of the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the thing is like, whenever Doyle is getting on base, I'm like, why isn't he running? Why isn't he going? First pitch, go. Like he should be, get more aggressive on the base paths. And I know it's the Rockies, not one to run into outs, and they're usually down in the score, so him trying to steal sometimes isn't opportune because they don't want to take the bat out of their guys' hands. But honestly, there's nobody in the Rockies lineup that I really care or I really worry about that of taking the bat out of his hands, because they're all kind of in the same boat most of the time. Even Ryan McMahon falls into that sometimes. But yeah, I want to see Doyle burn some rubber, baby.
Yeah. And you hear like Goodman and Drew Goodman and Jeff Houston and Spilly and Corey go like, why isn't Doyle running here? I'd send Doyle here. And then they don't.
Yeah. And then it's a ground ball double play. Thank you,
Brent. And that's what's frustrating, because we heard so much at the beginning of the year of we're going to be more aggressive, we're going to steal, and then they just haven't done that. And part of it's because, they're really having trouble scoring. But what might help you score more is getting that runner into scoring position without having to rely on a batter advancing him.
Yeah. But it's been awesome. And there's the real question, Evan. Where the heck does this guy need to hit in the lineup? We've seen him bounce around a little bit this year. He's hit at the bottom of the lineup. They've stuck him at the top of the lineup. Right now, he's been kind of hitting in the heart of the order, roughly around the 4, 5, 6 hole. Well, he just hit in the 4 hole today for the first time. But he's batted mostly in that heart, 5, 6, 7. He's batted 9th. He's batted 1st. He's batted 2nd. Where does he need to hit?
So far, he's doing his best work batting in kind of the heart of the order in that 5th spot. Honestly, I would just keep him there.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're not going to do that, you need to try and get him easy into leading off. But he's had some struggles when they put him in the leadoff spot. I think it puts a lot of pressure on him. But he's a guy who has the tools that he can hit wherever, because he can slap hit, he can bunt if he needs to, and he can sock a home run if he needs to. Mm-hmm. So you can really put him wherever. And I think maybe next year that's something that you really need to experiment with, is maybe start the season with Doyle as your leadoff guy.
Yeah, because
he is, his skill set makes him a prototypical leadoff hitter for the modern big leagues. He's basically what Chuck used to be, is that he'll get on base and he's got the wheels to burn you, but he can also hit a home run if he needs to. And I think once Chuck retires at the end of this year, I have no problem with Chuck leading off a lot this year. That's his spot. It's his last ride. That's not a problem with me this year, especially when we're not really needing to go out of our way to win ball games. But I think next year, as you continue this rebuild, you've got to look at who's going to be your new leadoff hitter. I don't think it's Tovar.
No,
there's some experimenting with that, but I don't think that's going to fly. I think it needs to be Doyle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing, because he's that classic prototypical leadoff speedy guy that can slap a base hit, and then he has that added power bonus. But it's just been something. They've thrown him in there. He's got 43 at bats, batting first, a 116 average, 146 on base, 186 slugging. His 332 OPS out of the leadoff spot is the lowest of any other spot in the batting order for him, aside from the 4 at bats he had batting cleanup.
Yeah, and it's going to take some time to get a guy really dialed into where they're going to hit best.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at all the guys who have hit leadoff this year, and surprisingly, the second best one is Elias Montero, who's in his 4 leadoff at bats, or 4 at bats batting first. He's hitting 500. But no, it's going to be interesting to see where they end up putting him. But for right now, for this season especially, I think what they've been doing with him is just fine.
Yeah, I think that batting 5th, that some of the Rockies need to do. It's their classic the way they want to construct the lineup, but Black wants to do it, just isn't working because he wants to do a left, right, left, right, left, right. Where in today's game, that really doesn't seem to matter as much. The teams really aren't. It's definitely preferred if you can, but it's not something you have to marry yourself to. Or like, oh, why is Ryan McMahon batting third? Put him fourth. I know you want to get your best players more at bats in the game, late in the game, but no, it's just more construction that needs to happen. But overall, Doyle has had a fantastic season, and I look forward to see what he does in the second half.
Yeah, me too. Unfortunately, though, we need to touch a little bit on Ezequiel Tovar, though, who had a pretty strong first half, but has just been slumping so hard here to start the month of July.
He's made me look like a fool. I traded for him in my fantasy league. I was bamboozled. Yeah, this is something that we've seen with Ezequiel Tovar, who's in a horrendous 0 for 24 slump at the moment. Ton of strikeouts, which has been a problem all year, where he was hotter than hot, doing everything, and then he's going in this valley where it really has been peaks and valleys for Tovar, and that's something that he needs to figure out because we can't afford for him to go in these peaks and valleys up and down.
Yeah,
he's got to. No, we'll expect the heights, and you'll come down from those, but it's preventing yourself from going into the valley or limiting how long you're there in the valley. Where I've gone 0 for 6 over 2 games. Okay, now I'm back in trajectory.
Yeah.
But for him, these last couple of these last several games, he has not looked good at the plate.
Yeah, since the start of July, he's 0 for 24 with 11 strikeouts, no walks. He's chasing really bad right now, and that's always been part of Tovar's plate approach. And I've said it before, he's never met a pitch low and away that he didn't want to swing at. It's the Carlos Gonzalez gambit. Gargo was always that guy where he was going to swing it a slider way low and away, but he had the bat speed and the plate discipline when he was still at the top of his game that he could sock that out of the park. And Tovar can do that occasionally, but right now he's just not, and he's flailing. It's him and Nolan Jones who are just looking kind of lost at the plate right now.
And I would say that their problems and why they look lost at the plate are still worlds apart, where Jones at times just isn't being aggressive enough the way he was last year, where Tovar is being way too aggressive. There's nothing wrong with being aggressive at the plate, Evan. I think we can both agree on that. But it's picking and choosing. You don't need to be aggressive on every single pitch that you're swinging at.
You've got to take it, and that's what Nolan Jones excelled at so much last year, is catching a first pitch that he knew he could do damage on and swinging at that first pitch. Versus, Nojo's been striking out looking a ton this year, but then you have Tovar who is just striking out. He's whiffing.
He leads. He's in the bottom 1 percentile in chase rate with a 44.8%. According to Baseball Savant, he's got a 33.9% whiff rate. That's a 4th percentile, so that's not very good. A 27.9% K rate, which is still not great for him, and a 3.4% walk rate, still bottom of the league. That's bad. His expected batting average is supposed to be 229, so it's just cratering more and more as we see it dip down more and more, because he was up to 300 not that long ago, but it's just begun to crater more and more, where he's just whiffing at everything. And looking in Baseball Savant, the thing that's weird is, off-speed pitches, he makes contact on him. He's got a good batting average against off-speed pitches, but it's the whiffing on stuff. A 39.6% whiff rate on breaking balls, almost 36% on off-speed. But like you said, it's that whiff rate on pitches down in the zone, down and away on a slider, that he's dipping down and just sweeping the dirt with his bat, and he's punching out. And we're talking about in our Slack channel of how long until he figures this out or stops doing that. Oh, yeah. You're 0-2. You're going to get a slider down the way. It's coming, and yet you still swing at it every time because you're trying to just make contact and golf it away or something.
And what's really crazy for me is that Tovar against 4-seam fastballs this year has a -4 run value per Baseball Savant StatCast. So he's not even doing a lot of good work against fastballs.
Mm-hmm.
And, for Tovar, you really need to do something on it. Like, yeah, his whiff rate against breaking pitches is super high, but his whiff rate against the fastball is 30.3%.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at his walk rate is bottom 3% in the league. His xWOBA is really bad. There's still clearly a lot of work to be done here. And he is doing, his defense is great, his speed is great, his arm is great. He's actually doing pretty good at barreling balls as well. Like if you look at his barrel rate, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, especially during this slump, his value at the plate is plummeting. And we were talking about this on our Slack channel earlier. It's like Brenton Doyle needs to get together a hitting camp this off season and invite Ezequiel Tovar, Nolan Jones, Eliris Montero, and anyone else who wants to be part of it to make these more mechanical adjustments.
Yeah. And I was looking at the Savant Illustrator, which is always fun. You can mess around with it on Baseball Savant. I won't mess with sharing it here on the video version, but he's seen roughly about 180 pitches in terms of sweepers, sliders, and curveballs. Those 3 pitches, about 176 pitches, and guess where they are, Evan? Dotted on the map. And these are swinging strikes, mind you. Can you guess where they're all where the really red part of the chart is?
Low and away, baby.
That's right. So on those 3 pitches, so we've seen about 180 pitches there. That's where those breaking balls and off-speed ones are going. 44 are swinging strikes, and there's a nice red 90-degree angle on this chart, nice and red, low and away from him. So it's at some point, you're a big leaguer, you have to figure that out. You got to show you can grow from that. He's young, but he's in his second full season. He's got this 7-year extension he signed. That's something that he and the Rockies have to hammer out because they can't afford for him to keep doing that again and again and again because that just tanks his value. No, if you can't put that ball in play, if you're going to be so predictable, it's not worthwhile. And I know it kind of sounds like we're being super tough on him, but these are conversations we have to have because we know what he can do as a player, what he means.
It's tough love because the potential is through the roof for this kid. People were making Troy Tulowitzki comps from day one.
Yeah.
And his defense is incredible. And when he is hitting, when he is hot with the stick, he's incredible too.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is keeping that bat consistent. I would rather him be a consistent positive at bat than have these incredible hot and cold streaks. Because right now he is on a huge cold streak, but then earlier in the season he's had these crazy hot streaks.
Yeah. And we have enough Rockies players that do that. Ryan McMahon does that. Charlie Blackmon does that. Elias Diaz has done that. Brendan Rodgers has done that. We don't need these incredibly hot, incredibly cold streaks. We need some lukewarm streaks in there.
Yeah. It's like I think about
not going to cover off the ball, but he's got a hit in this game. He goes hitless for a couple games, throws out a 2-hit game. We need more of that consistency, like you're saying.
Yeah, and I think about his molten hot May, where he hit 308 for the month, had an OPS of 864, 5 home runs, struck out 35 times, which is still a lot, but it was a little bit toned down. And then you roll into his June, and his June was okay, but there was a clear difference here. He actually struck out less in June, but wasn't really doing much at the plate. His OPS dipped, his on-base percentage dipped under 300 for that month. But then he starts off the month of July, just, the first 6 games, and he's been so lost at the plate. And I would really like to see him, not do that, because we know how good this kid can be.
And he's just like Brenton Doyle, where you got to figure out the best spot for him in the lineup. And I don't know if his numbers in the leadoff spot are better than I thought they'd be, but still, it's being so aggressive early on that hurts him. Where if he could be patient, draw a walk, pounce on a pitch over the plate, so you're just eliminating that slider down in the way, you can spit on those, you don't worry about him. He becomes a very valuable leadoff hitter and can do a lot of damage and set the table, hit home runs, do that kind of stuff. And then, maybe there's a Brenton Doyle behind him batting second who can find success. And then, you have a nice 1-2 punch at the top of the lineup. Somebody else is hitting third. So we like Zeke, but we need him. We need him to show that he can continue to grow, that he doesn't become complacent at his age that he's at right now. He's already got the extension contract. He's set. He is in as the staple at shortstop for the Rockies for the foreseeable future. But he can't become complacent. He can't just say, well, this is who I am, accept it. No, you need to show you can grow. Look at Brenton Doyle. He changed his approach, his plate. Lourdes Montero did it. He changed his approach at the plate. Now, there was plenty of negatives there that happened. No more power. But he cut down on the strikeouts and increased his walks because he stopped chasing pitches down and away. Tovar can do that. I think he's a better hitter. He's a good hitter, but he's got to show he can grow and fix those things.
He's definitely a better hitter than we've seen over the last week.
Yeah, much so. But we still love you, Tovar. But us old folks are gonna get mad at you because you're better than this. Shake harder, boy.
Look, everyone, an old man is talking.
But we'll take another quick break here. We're going to come back, some quick roster change. And, hey, June Players of the Month. Yes, June sucked, but they're still Players of the Month. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Back here to the final segment here on Affected by Altitude. I'm Skyler. That's Evan. He's wearing an all-star hat. Mine just has an all-star patch on it. But awful all-star jerseys all the way around. But first things first, Evan. Finally, one head finally rolled off the Colorado Rockies. Well, there's been a couple, but this seemed like a big one too. Especially in the pitching rotation, because this is one where we're like, it's okay start, but he's just a placeholder for now. Lasted much longer than I think any of us thought he would, but Dakota Hudson is finally off the roster, was designated for assignment on this Sunday, July 7th, in lieu of calling up and promoting Tanner Gordon, who made a fantastic start in his major league debut against the Royals at Coors Field. Pitched much better than his lines showed. It was really one bad inning, but aside from that, the dude pounded strikes. A really good outing, and we look forward to seeing more what he can do.
Yeah, Tanner Gordon today, the line is really deceiving because it shows that he gave up 8 hits, 5 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, 0 walks, and better to focus on is the 4 strikeouts and 0 walks. He pounded the zone. He threw 78 pitches, and something like 65 of them were for strikes. He had an 84% first pitch strike rate, all really good. He was locating all of his pitches really well. Really, he had about 2 complete mistake pitches. Both were change-ups that stayed a little bit high and didn't break his down as much as he would like to, and they were both hit for home runs. Yeah. Okay. The majority of his runs, 4 of them came in the 4th inning. Not 4th inning, goodness. Came in the 2nd inning. And there was a lot of bad luck involved in that, where you have You had a couple squeak through at second base between Ezequiel Tovar and Aaron Shunk. That if they had been gotten to, those probably both would have been, potentially double plays. And then, after a while, he gave up the home run. But outside of that inning, he was really, really good. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. I really hope he continues to get starts. I hope this isn't just going to be a placeholder start. I'd like to continue to see him get starts because this is the time of year. And the Rockies said with the designated for assignment of Dakota Hudson, that this is to move more towards that youth movement again. And if you're going to do that, then you got to commit to giving guys like Tanner Gordon regular starts, even if they're not necessarily, wowing, nonstop. You've got to look for what they can do and what we can develop them for. And, I think Tanner Gordon shouldn't be, walk out of today's game with his head held extremely high because he's playing a pretty good team in the Kansas City Royals, a playoff team right now. And outside of one inning and a couple mistake pitches, he was great.
Yeah. And I like that you point that as a perfect segue. What stuck out so much was the dude was throwing strikes, was pounding the zone, unlike the guy he replaced, Dakota Hudson, who we knew coming into the season, okay, he spent all that time with the Cardinals. Yeah, he's kind of a soft-tossing ground ball specialist. Rockies were just salivating, like, yes, this is the type of guy that we love, gets ground balls, and he's always kind of struggled with walks a little bit, but relatively easy signing, pretty cheap. You can slot him in at the back end of your rotation. And, aside from one good month, Dakota Hudson had some good outings. Like, he showed glimpses of, okay, we see what we got here. What's that? You only allowed one run against one or two runs against the Dodgers in Los Angeles through 7 innings or so. Like, he threw out some good outings. But overall, the thing that was most evident for everybody was the inconsistency of his ability to throw strikes, where it seemed like every game he's going 4 innings. Oh, he's got 5 walks. He's got 4 walks. He was just walks galore, where his K per 9 and his walks per 9 are pretty close this year.
Yeah. And a big thing to point out is so the month of May was a really good month for the Rockies and for Rockies pitching. And Dakota Hudson was no exception. May was his best month. He made 6 starts and had an ERA of 3.86 over 32 2/3 innings. But he also walked 14 batters compared to his 15 strikeouts. And in April, he walked 15. In May, he walked 14. In June, he walked 14. And in his one start in July, which ended up being his final start for the Rockies, he walked 3 while striking out 4. And he also just his controls all over the place. And you look at his StatCast page, some of his stuff was elite. One of the best ground ball rates in all of baseball, 88% ground ball rate. That's fantastic. And he wasn't really giving up that many barrels either. But all of his other stuff, chase rate, whiff rate, K rate, walk rate, around the bottoms of the league. And, when Dakota Hudson made his last start, it was kind of rumored that this was his audition to stay with the team. And, he couldn't cut it. He didn't have that bad an outing in his final outing of this of the year with the Rockies. He went 5 innings, gave up 5 earned runs on 6 hits, walked I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong line. Gave up 3 earned runs on 7 hits, but only went 4 2/3 innings, walked 3 batters, struck out 4. And that's just not going to cut it. And especially on a guy who's only on a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. We were all thinking if anyone's going to get cut, it's going to be him or it's going to be Ty Block. And right now it's pretty telling that the Rockies see more value in Ty Block than they do Dakota Hudson.
Yeah. And it was a tale of 2 different pitchers a lot of the time for Ty Block because, the walks, that was the biggest issue for him. Walks are going to come back to haunt you. You can get away, 1 or 2 walks, but once you're getting into 4, 5, and throwing maybe 4 or 5 innings, elevated pitch counts for him, he's pitching into a lot of deep counts. It adds up, and the thing that really got him, and even though Bud Black says no, his struggles at Coors Field did not contribute to him getting DFA'd. I'm pretty sure they are. When you have a 8 points, when you've got an 8-point-something ERA at Coors Field at your home ballpark, and I joked about it in the Slack channel, like, you just don't let him pitch at Coors Field anymore. And because he was much better on the road. You look at his numbers on the road, and you're like, that's a pretty solid like back end rotation piece that a team could use. But for the Rockies, he has to pitch at home, and his makeup and everything, he couldn't afford to miss. And when he's walking guys at Coors Field, especially, it's going to come back to bite you in the hiney, and it got him plenty.
Yeah, at Coors Field, of all Rockies pitchers, Dakota Hudson was by far the worst, especially for starters. In 9 starts, he had an 8.26 ERA over 40 and 1/3 innings, 26 walks, 26 strikeouts, a whip of 2.13, and an average opposing batting average against of 359. Mm-hmm. And on the road, he was a heck of a lot better, though he still walked a lot. But you play half of your games at home, and that's just not going to fly. Like the next worst regular starter for the Rockies on the road is Ryan Feltner, and his ERA is more than 2 points lower than Dakota Hudson's. And so, that's just not going to fly. And you can't, as much as we joke about just only have him start on the road, you really can't have a starter that only starts on the road.
Yeah.
Especially if he's going to be taking up both a 40-man roster spot and a active roster spot, when you have a limit to how many pitchers you can have on your roster. And I think there's a chance that Dakota Hudson maybe gets claimed off of waivers, because I think a team is going to see, oh, you know what, he was actually pretty solid on the road. But I think this is the right move. I don't think keeping him until the trade deadline was really going to cut it. Especially as his value continued to drop lower and lower as he struggled. I think this was the right call, especially with, you've got Herman Marquez, who's chomping at the bit to get back up to the bigs. He's going to be back next week.
Yeah.
So get it done.
And it ties into, Ryan Feltner had his start pushed back because he struggled a lot at home, and the Rockies saw an opportunity, like, let's push him back, give him a breather so he can pitch on the road, or he's had a little bit more success. He can pitch in Ohio, in Cincinnati, in front of friends and family. That maybe can help boost his confidence and re-energize him as we try to figure out Ryan Feltner, because he could also be a piece they hold on to, or there's teams interested probably in him. And so, hey, let's see what we can get and build some value for him, or just make sure we get him figured out. Yeah, Dakota Hudson was always going to be a replacement at some point. It was just a matter of when, and it just kept stacking up. He had leading the league in losses for a starter, so it was time. And
we joke that wins and losses are kind of meaningless for a pitcher, especially with poor Big Decky Hudson. Some of the worst run support in the league. Across all of his starts, 17 starts, the Rockies only scored 28 total runs.
Yeesh.
That's real bad. But at the same time,
he was digging his own grave a lot of the time.
He was well on pace for well over 20 losses this season.
Yeah. And can't have that. Rough stuff, but
yeah, I'm wishing the best.
Yeah, and they praised his veteran, his leadership in the clubhouse, his presence there. But it just, like we keep talking about, you can't just have guys on your roster because they're good guys in the clubhouse. Like, they need to contribute on the field.
Yeah.
And he's just not doing it.
1 Jake Cave is fine. 5 Jake Caves is too many.
It's true. But yeah, wish him all the best. And hey, who knows? I would assume he probably rejects an outright assignment.
Oh, he absolutely
free agency.
will.
But like you're saying, I think he's worth getting picked up by somebody. No, he's still a valuable depth piece that you can throw at the back of your rotation for a little bit. Now, if you have guys injured, here's someone you can throw out, and he's not having to pitch at Coors Field. He'll go in, maybe give you 4 or 5 innings. They probably won't be the prettiest, but it'll at least help you out. He can eat some innings for you.
I could see the Brewers claiming him on waivers.
And then
the Brewers, who have been desperate for starting pitching this year just due to injuries.
Yeah. And then they turn him into a Cy Young candidate.
I don't, they're not miracle workers. Like, I look at Dakota Hudson's career so far, and he did have a really bright start to his career, but after he had Tommy John, he just really hasn't been the same pitcher. And that happens sometimes, but there is still value to be had on him. So yeah, wish him the best.
But so that's the big news. And as we wrap up the episode here, real quick, we'll do our June Players of the Month. And you may be asking yourself, but June was terrible. And you're not wrong. But it was April. And we still got guys in April. But yeah, June was pretty rough across the board. But there's still some guys to recognize. And, tip of the cap to them as we do our Player and Pitcher of the Month. So, Evan, are you ready? Do you have your guys?
I do.
Well, then let's do it. We'll start here with the we'll do Pitcher of the Month first.
So Pitcher of the Month, honestly, and I think this would be maybe the third month in a row, but really I'm leaning towards Cal Quantrill again, because Quantrill did have a down June, but at the same time, he pitched the most innings, had a lot of really gutsy starts, and, while he wasn't at his best, he was still getting through 5-6 innings every game and getting it done and leaving the Rockies in a spot where they could still win a ball game.
Mm-hmm.
He's got that dog in him. So yeah, Cal Quantrill in the month of June had an ERA of 4.26. Among Rockies starters, that's still one of the lowest in the entire month, telling you how rough that month was. Over 31 2/3 innings, only gave up 15 earned runs, 23 strikeouts to 11 walks, had one of the lower whips at 1.48. He did what needed to be done. It wasn't always pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And he definitely had a little bit of an issue in the month of June locating that splitter.
Yeah.
And I think that was his major downfall. But at the same time, he got it done. He was gutsy and he was emotional, and he had about as good a month as any Rocky starter in that month. I want to give an honorable mention to Kyle Freeland, who came back in who came back in June and was pretty solid overall, but he only made 2 starts in June, which is why I didn't want to give it to him. 2 starts, 12 2/3 innings, ERA up 1.42, 7 strikeouts to 3 walks. But for me, it's got to be Cal again. He's been that guy.
Yes, and I believe I have to fall into that camp as well. It's that 3 months in a row. Cal Quantrill is our Pitcher of the Month. Unanimous.
It says a lot about how much value he's brought to this team. We claimed him, we picked him up, we traded for him from the Cleveland Guardians, who were ready to wash their hands of him after he had one difficult season, strewn with injuries, and he's come in and he has been this gutsy, emotional, but mature. He's been, what do they call it? That bulldog mentality. He goes out there and fights till the very last pitch, no matter what, even if he's not on his A game.
Mm-hmm.
I love this guy.
And the only way for the Rockies to stop this trend is to trade him for pieces. That's the only way right now that I see them stopping this trend of making Cal Quantrill the Pitcher of the Month.
I think there's a shot that Kyle Freeland, if he continues how he's been since coming back from the injured list, I think he's a candidate for July, especially after his first outing of July was really good. And, we'll see how it goes. But it seriously is either Cal Quantrill is going to get traded at the deadline for a haul, or I think they try and lock him down for an extension.
Yeah. Quick, just like you throughout Kyle Freeland, Anthony Molina, 13 1/3 innings in relief. But solid month, 2 runs, 10 hits, 7 strikeouts, 3 walks. Good little month over 7 games for Anthony Molina. Hopefully they start using him a little bit more, because he definitely is deserving of that.
Yeah, definitely seeing, it's nice to see actual development in real time from a Rockies pitcher. We don't always get that. And Molina, we've seen it from where he's getting more confident. He's going out there and just getting innings where he can and looking really solid. I like Anthony Molina a lot. I think he's going to end up being a really good Rule 5 pickup. And I'm excited to keep watching him for the rest of the season.
And then real quick, our hitter of the month.
I'm going with Brendan Rodgers, actually. So Brendan Rodgers, since coming back from the injured list here in June, he played just 14 games in June, but he was without a doubt the Rockies' best hitter and really has continued to be here into July. But month of June, Rodgers had 16 hits, 5 doubles, 3 home runs, 10 RBI, drew 3 walks to 9 strikeouts, which is a pretty solid rate. OPS of 990, which is one of the best among qualified hitters for the month. You know, he came in and looked healthy and looked ready to go. And it's really made me think, you know, because Rodgers is also a candidate to be traded here at this upcoming deadline, that I'm going to miss this kind of play from him, because when he gets hot, he's so much fun to watch. And, you know, it stinks that he's a very slow starter. His Aprils tend to be pretty rough. But when you get to the middle of the season like this and he's just putting together good professional at bats and being a strong on base presence, he's a lot of fun to watch.
Very much so. And I totally looking at this, I forgot Chris Bryant played in June. He played 2 games in June. What the heck?
He had 7 whole at bats.
Whoa. Oh man. It was just an aside. Yeah, I partly leaning towards Brendan Rodgers, and I think, yeah, he probably is more deserving of it overall. But I do want to talk about Mr. Tolia, because while the slash line is not exactly what you'd hope, he's still, for what he's done and what we've seen, this is much needed improvement for him, because he came up and played, since he got called up in June, has played pretty much every single game. He's played pretty much every single game, has become the staple at first base. And he had a really good month of June where he played 22 games, 80 at-bats. He had 19 hits, so it wasn't the most, but he's still up there in the top of the team. 5 home runs led the team. 16 RBI led the team. He had 2 triples. That led the team. Only 1 double, so he was really going for broke. Single or a home run was really his MO.
2 true outcomes.
But he had 3 stolen bases, 27 strikeouts. Yeah, that's quite a bit. That was second most on the team last month, behind Ryan McMahon, who had 36, but he had 7 walks, which is good to see a little bit more. We'd like to see more of that from him. But still, across the board for Tolia, 238 average, much better than what he's done in the past. 292 on base, that really needs improvement. But a 488 slugging was 4th best on the team. So I think I'll agree with you. I think it's still Rodgers just across the board. But I think for me, Michael Tolia really put in a case, at least for most improved player of the month, where he actually just showed what he can do, showed up and did some things offensively that were awesome, because he's right there with Hunter Goodman. Dude's combined for 10 home runs in June.
And I think it's worth pointing out, honestly. So let's compare April to June when he comes back here. In April, his on-base percentage was 114 with a batting average of 0.093. And then he comes back in June and he's more than doubled both of those. And so, you obviously want an on-base percentage above 300, but the fact that he's gotten it up all that way, the fact that he had a 292 on-base percentage in the month of June, largely because he actually started drawing some walks. He had multiple multi-walk games. Heck, today's game, he drew 2 walks and had a single. That's a solid day at the office right there. So it's nice to see that he is working. I joked, in June, it's like Michael Tolia is telling this team, please do not option me again.
Yeah. So it's not where you'd want it to be, but like I said, maybe he's not player of the month, but he's most improved player of the month from where he started at the beginning of the season and then what he did last month. and hopefully can continue that in June. And really quick here, really interesting, 18 strikeouts, 11 walks for Nolan Jones. Talk about how rough things have been for him, especially as of late. But you look across the board, 214 batting average, but a 370 on base for Nolan Jones last month in his 14 games he played. There's still some things there for Jonesy. He's just having a rough go of it and needs his confidence back.
He's got to find the balance. He's got to find the balance between this really dialed back plate approach where, yes, he's drawing lots of walks, but he's also striking out a ton and he's not really making any good contact. And what we saw from him last year, where he was ultra aggressive, especially on the first pitch, and making a ton of hard, loud contact. He's got to find that middle ground, because right now, like, I love Nolan Jones, but it's been just such a disappointing season for him so far. You know, where he's barely played, and when he has played, he's just not got that same thunder, that same confidence that we saw him have last year.
Yeah, the league adjusted to him, and the Rockies did not help him adjust back. But, yeah. Anyways, Brendan Rodgers, I think, again, I'll go with you. That's our unanimous one. I think we've been pretty unanimous for these past 3 months, so go us. But that'll do it here for this edition of Affected by Altitude. As always, this episode ran a little bit long, but that's because we had to do this stuff.
It's also because it's a Skyler hosted episode.
This is true.
I was originally slotted to host this episode, but because my voice ain't quite all the way back yet, we had
Evan
to make that executive decision.
Evan decided to gargle a bucket of gravel.
I decided to smoke 2 packs a day for the last 2 weeks, and I think it really worked out in my favor.
Evan just ate a bowl of gravel for breakfast this morning.
A bowl of nails without any milk.
But Evan, where can the folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Evan_Lang27. I would love to hear from you. You can also catch me writing the Monday Rock Pile and Weekly Pebble Report over at purplerow.com. Just a little organizational announcement for the Pebble Report. Starting this week, the Pebble Report is going to be its own separate article, just to kind of break things up throughout the day and throughout the week. Because, you know, as I'm sure you've seen, the Monday Rock Piles end up being super duper long because we add on the Pebble Report. So just keep an eye out for that. You can also find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, all at the same handle. That's at Rocky Mountain Rooftop, at ROCKYMTN Rooftop. Skyler, where can the listeners find you at? What's your codec channel?
You can find me at 104.78. But you can find me over at Twitter at sideline_crowd, and then writing Wednesday Rock Piles over at purplerow.com, and writing stuff for Fans First Sports Network when I can. It's mostly been series previews, but I'm getting some ideas, trying to write some more stuff so I can get that moolah. That cheddar cheese, Evan. Keep the lights on. But also, be sure to follow and check out Every Rocky Ever. We're trying to work on some things, and we're working on doing our special Todd Helton, the Hall of Fame episode. But we need your thoughts, so be on the lookout. We're going to try and get people's just comments and questions, not so much questions, memories and things about Todd Helton. And we'll hopefully be able to have a good special episode with that coming up soon, which Hall of Fame, was that 2 weeks from now?
2 weeks.
It's around the corner. The best thing to happen to a Rocky this year. So be on the lookout for that at Every Rocky Ever. My brother and I will hopefully have something special.
Maybe, you know what could be cool is, depending on the time that they do the ceremony, is maybe live streaming something on that, so you can all watch me cry in real time as Todd Helton makes his speech.
Yeah, we just zoom in on Evan's face and just be on tear watch.
Get real in there, just the single movie tear.
But well, fun stuff here in this month. We got the draft, we got all kinds of stuff. So be on the lookout. We appreciate you tuning in, following along with us. But until next time, this has been not Every Rocky Ever. This is Affected by Altitude. Until next time, I'm Skyler. That's Evan. Hit him.
Farewell, Colonel. We have to destroy the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Evan? Evan.
Do 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 do. Ah. This is a dumb show.
Mm-hmm.